From the rivalry that led to verbal jabs at each other for publicity to potentially doing big numbers on pay-per-view, here's the real reason behind the Jake Paul and Nate Diaz war. For starters, they've got a ready-made storyline to sell the fight. Now, you gotta admit, some of the greatest rivalries in boxing and MMA history all started when two fighters had some issues with each other, even before they were set up. Well, it's sort of the same case here, because Paul and Diaz have been snipping at each other for quite some time, at least on social media. And their beef goes all the way back to 2021, right after Diaz took to Twitter to take a shot at Ben Askren for labeling him a retired wrestler who can't fight or box. Not only that, but he also claimed that Paul would easily get smoked in a real fight. Basically, he meant easy wins didn't count. In fact, he went as far as accusing Anderson Silva of being on the payroll right after he lost to Paul in the ring. Speaking of which, this is typically where the rivalry spikes, because let's just say things got out of hand backstage. The UFC legend literally slapped one of Jake's entourage. And no, there's zero exaggeration here, because the entire incident was caught on camera. Now, no one's clear what started the whole fight in the first place, but Diaz's slap instantly shut it down. As for Paul, he went back into boxing in the night's main event for his 6th back-to-back victory. While it seemed like he hit the pause button for a while, it didn't take long for him to come back and call out Diaz. Here's what he said: "Stop fighting people for free. Let's do it in the ring, okay?" I mean, he even called the UFC legend a street gangster, claiming all the toughness was just surface level. But that wasn't the end of it. Now that he got rid of Silva with an 8-round knockout, he wanted to fight Diaz next. Not to mention, the 37-year-old was now out of contract with the UFC and ready for a crossover to boxing. And there are a couple of reasons this makes sense. They've been at it for over 18 months now. But let me tell you, this isn't gonna be easy. Paul's got a 6-1 boxing record with 4 knockouts. On the other hand, this is gonna be Diaz's first ever boxing match of his career. Sure, he set his mark in the UFC octagon with his 22-13-0 record, but will he be able to recreate something like this again in boxing? Only time will tell. As of now, he's got enough rage in him for the trash talk. I mean, it didn't even take him long enough to kickstart the war of rounds right before the upcoming fight. He dropped the F-bomb and vowed that Jake's gonna end up like Conor McGregor. If anything, he considers himself the king of combat sports and claims he's headed back to get his UFC belts. And let me tell you, he's not boasting without reason. Right before becoming a free agent, he literally ended a fight at UFC 279 against Tony Ferguson with a victory thanks to his guillotine choke.
At 2 minutes, 52 seconds of the 4th round, declaring the winner by submission due to a guillotine choke, Nate Diaz!
At the same time, Jake shared the ring with another one of his rivals, Tommy Fury, earlier this year. And he faced his first loss by a split decision in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
73 to the winner by split decision, Tommy Fury.
So if you're talking about the most recent fights, there's clearly some sort of imbalance here. But with so many barbs already thrown at each other, the only thing that makes sense is for the two to meet in the ring and settle the score once and for all. Having said that, Jake's pretty careful about setting up the fight. In the past, he always held some kind of advantage over his opponents. And yes, I'm even talking about the ones who had way more combat experience than him. First, the problem child knocked out Ben. But if I'm being honest, he was never known for his striking when he was fighting in MMA either. Not to mention, he looked pretty out of shape. Next, there were Tyrone Woodley and Anderson, who faced defeat in the ring too. At the same time, Woodley wasn't doing so well either. As for Silva, he should have retired a couple of years ago. So that begs the question, is Diaz right? Were these a couple of easy wins? And if so, would the 37-year-old fit the same pattern here? Probably yes, because he's far smaller and past his prime. Now, Diaz fights at cruiserweight, and the heaviest he ever fought was at 170, so he isn't exactly the strongest he's ever been. On top of that, he's lost the charm and taken way too much damage over the past couple of years. Sure, he might be a better boxer than any of Paul's opponents from a technical standpoint, but consider him a smaller and aging MMA fighter, it seems like the problem child would easily take him down. On the other hand, this isn't going to be an easy match because Diaz might think of his rival as beatable too. For starters, despite 6 professional wins, all of his opponents were questionable, and they didn't seem like impressive victories either. I mean, many times his techniques didn't look that perfect either. On top of that, he seems to get tired easily in the last couple of rounds. And let's be honest, if it wasn't for all his YouTube fame, do you think he'd be getting all this attention? Because a lot of fans don't think so. On the other hand, while Diaz hasn't ever boxed professionally, he's still known for being one of the most impressive boxers.
Diaz gets them out! My goodness! Now he's got the back!
That's it! He's got the choke!
Nate Diaz!
He tapped!
He has done it!
He tapped!
Nate Diaz beats Conor McGregor!
All thanks to his volume-heavy, combination-based game that's gotten him victories against some amazing strikers. And I'm talking about Conor McGregor, Michael Johnson, Anthony Pettis, and even Leon Edwards. Plus, despite his age, surprisingly, he doesn't get tired as quickly as the YouTuber. Having said that, while he'd be giving up in terms of size and power, he's still got his technique and cardio to count on. And that's exactly why things might switch up in the last couple of rounds. But this isn't gonna be the end. This showdown could set up 2 more fights in the future. While they seem poles apart in terms of personality and pretty much everything else, they do have one thing in common. Both of them have pretty famous older brothers, Logan Paul and Nick Diaz. While the Paul brothers made their way to boxing and pro wrestling through YouTube, the Diaz brothers have been in some pretty huge fights.
Oh, he's done.
Oh.
He's gonna break the arm.
It is all over!
Outstanding!
Nate Diaz transitions to the armbar and defeats Takanori Gomi!
So, thanks to the fiery personalities of their siblings, you might see a fight coming up between Logan and Nick, too. Any combination of those is gonna sell out arenas for sure. But until that happens, get ready for August 5th, 2023, because Jake and Nate are set to fight in Dallas. That's right, the 8-round fight is scheduled at the American Airlines Center. Both of them will be wearing 10-ounce gloves for the fight as they get ready to settle this rivalry once and for all. Up until this point, fans were starting to think that all of the trash talk was just for publicity, and that it wasn't going anywhere. But turns out that wasn't the case after all. While Paul's coming in to flaunt his size and power, Diaz is gearing up with his techniques and experience. It's only a matter of time before we see who manages to bag a win. Until then, here's everything you need to know about the real reason for the Diaz and Paul fight.